All right, let's dive into what makes Japan tick, economically speaking, and as a society. We're going beyond the usual GDP and all those numbers. We're going deep with the help of someone who's lived it.
Always interesting to hear from someone who's been immersed in a different culture. An outsider's perspective can be really revealing.
Exactly. Today we're drawing from a YouTube video. A guy named Héctor García. He lived in Japan for several months and documented his observations.
Oh, interesting.
His channel is called El Lago de los Business, and his video is titled Por esto son ricos los Japoneses,
Oh,
which translates to This is why the Japanese are rich.
hmm.
And it got me thinking, everyone points to Japan as like this model of success. But is it just those long work hours we always hear about? What's the full story behind their financial stability and, how well their society seems to function?
Great questions. And I think one thing Hector noticed right away was just how financially stable most people seem to be in Japan. Obviously, costs vary, big cities versus rural areas.
Yeah, of course.
But wages generally seem to provide a good standard of living across the board.
And their career paths are so different from what we're used to. Hector talks about this concept of lifelong employment with one company. Can you imagine, like, dedicating your entire career to a single organization?
It's a huge shift in mindset, right? I mean, we're practically raised on this idea of climbing the ladder, switching jobs, always looking for that next big opportunity.
Right, right.
But in Japan, it's like that loyalty to one company, it breeds this really deep sense of, well, loyalty, obviously, but it also lets employees really develop specialized expertise.
That makes sense. So it's like the company invests in them for the long haul, and in turn, the employees are totally dedicated to the success of that company.
Exactly. And that stability probably contributes a lot to their overall economic success as a country.
Definitely. And then there's the consumption tax, or VAT. Did you know it's only 10%?
Oh, wow.
It was even lower for years, like 8%. That's got to help keep things affordable for everyone.
Yeah, that's a huge difference compared to what we see in a lot of countries.
Totally. But, we can't talk about Japan without mentioning the work ethic.
Oh, absolutely.
Hector even tells this story about how it's not uncommon for people to work late,
Yeah.
sometimes even sleeping in their offices. That dedication is next level.
It's like it's woven into their identity. And it's fascinating because Hector suggests that this dedication might be connected to, get this, their pre-war reverence for the emperor, where service and loyalty were everything.
Oh, that's really interesting.
It kind of makes you think about how values transform over time, but the core ideas kind of remain.
Yeah, how those historical values can still be seen in their behavior today.
Hmm.
And discipline, mastery, those also seem to be super important in Japan. Hector used the example of sushi chefs.
Oh, yeah.
5 to 10 years of training before they're considered masters. That's insane.
It's incredible, that dedication to perfection. And you see it everywhere in Japan, not just in their food, but their technology, their art. Everything is done with such precision.
Yeah, they respect the process. They understand that true mastery takes time and dedication. But is there ever a downside to that? All that discipline. I mean, could it stifle creativity or make them less adaptable?
That's a great question. I mean, discipline is great, but there are times when you need to be flexible, right?
Right.
And Hector tells this funny story about how he was struggling to open some beer bottles with a corkscrew. And his Japanese hosts, they couldn't figure out any other way to open them.
I can picture that.
They were so used to the specific tool for the specific task.
That's so classic. Like when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Exactly. So it highlights how cultures think about problem solving differently. The Japanese, they're amazing at efficiency and precision, but sometimes a bit of adaptability might be needed.
Makes you wonder how they handle change and disruption in such a fast-paced world. Now here's something I found surprising, and Hector did too. Even though Japan is prosperous, there's not this ostentatious display of wealth you might expect. Hector was expecting to see luxury cars everywhere, but was surprised to find that most people drive these smaller, practical vehicles.
That's so interesting. It's like their values are reflected in their choices,
Yeah.
practicality and efficiency over showing off. And when you think about how densely populated Japanese cities are, smaller cars just make sense.
It really challenges the bigger's better mentality we see in a lot of consumer cultures.
Mhm.
Makes you think about your own values, right? Like what's more important to you, practicality or status?
Yeah, big question. Japan's example really makes you rethink what it means to be wealthy and successful. It's not all about the stuff, it's about having a good life, a fulfilling life.
Sure, sure. And speaking of values, honesty seems to be fundamental to Japanese society.
Oh, definitely.
Hector mentions a conversation he had with a Japanese man who emphasized the importance of honor even over material wealth, even in death.
Wow, that says a lot about their perspective, doesn't it?
It does.
They're thinking about the long game, about their reputation, about living a life of integrity.
And I bet that focus on honesty creates a lot of trust in their society, which probably contributes to their stability and success.
Absolutely. When people trust each other, everything runs more smoothly. Business, social interactions, everything. It's foundational to a strong community.
It seems like their real strength lies in their cultural values as much as their economic policies or technological prowess.
Yeah, their values are like the bedrock of everything, shaping how they work, how they consume, even how they approach problems.
It's a great reminder that true prosperity isn't just about money. It's about creating a society where people feel secure, respected, and connected to something bigger than themselves.
I completely agree. Japan gives us a lot to think about, a lot of great examples. But we have to talk about the practical realities of living there, too.
Oh, right. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the cost of living. Hector points out that it can be pretty expensive, especially for imported goods.
Yeah, makes sense.
He was shocked by how much fruit costs. Like, apples can be around 100 pesos each.
Wow.
And even lemons, those can be 20 to 30 pesos each.
It really shows the challenges Japan faces, with their limited agricultural land.
Yeah.
Having to import so much food, tariffs, transportation costs, it all adds up.
Makes you appreciate how readily available and affordable certain foods are for us. And you can't talk about Japan without mentioning rice. It's like their staple food. They eat it for every meal.
Oh, yeah, it's central to their diet.
And the government regulates the price of rice,
Yeah.
which shows how seriously they take food security.
Absolutely. Rice is essential for so many Japanese people.
Now, here's a great tip Hector shared. Apparently, you can find discounted food at supermarkets and convenience stores later in the day.
Oh, smart.
A practical way to save money and reduce food waste.
Great idea.
Speaking of cost, housing in cities like Tokyo, that's got to be crazy expensive, right?
Oh, yeah. But Hector mentioned that homes in rural areas can be surprisingly affordable. A lot of those areas are facing depopulation.
Interesting. So it's like those population shifts and economic factors really impact the housing market. And the way they rent apartments in Japan is totally different too. Hector said a lot of the decisions are made based on pictures and descriptions, not in-person viewings.
It's pretty different from how we do things.
Yeah, imagine trying to rent a place without ever stepping foot inside.
That takes a lot of trust. But it speaks to that underlying sense of honesty and reliance on information being accurate, which seems to be a big part of Japanese culture.
And then there's this custom of giving a cash gift to the landlord, like as a thank you for letting you live there.
It's an interesting cultural difference. It's all about building positive relationships, maintaining that harmony, not just a transaction, but a gesture of respect.
It's nice, but yeah, pretty different from what we're used to. Okay, let's move on to transportation. Japan's got this amazing public transport system, and bicycles are super popular too. Hector was blown away by how many bicycles are parked at train stations.
It's a great image.
Really shows their commitment to efficiency and sustainability, right?
Definitely.
And their trains and buses, the fares vary depending on the distance. Hector said a 40-minute train ride might cost around 100 pesos, while a short bus ride, like 10 to 15 minutes, could be between 80 and 100 pesos.
Okay.
And of course, there's the Shinkansen, the bullet train.
Oh, yeah, a true marvel of engineering.
Super fast, but pretty expensive.
Of course, you're paying for that speed and efficiency.
Exactly. Japan seems to do a great job of balancing tradition and modernity. They've preserved so much of their cultural heritage while also embracing these incredible technologies.
And that ability to adapt and innovate is probably a key factor in their ongoing success.
For sure. Now, for those times when you need to get somewhere quickly but don't want to take the train, there are always taxis, but they can be pricey. Hector said he took a 20 to 25-minute taxi ride, and it cost him a whopping 2,500 pesos.
Yikes, that's a lot. But it seems like in a country with such amazing public transport, taxis are seen as more of a luxury.
That makes sense. And ride-hailing apps like Uber or Didi, they exist but aren't as common in Japan. They're often connected to the traditional taxi services.
Interesting. It's funny how technology gets adopted at different speeds in different places.
Right. It shows there's no one-size-fits-all approach to technology. What works in one place might not work in another. It's all about finding the right solution for your specific context.
Absolutely. And Japan's approach to technology is a great example of how they've tailored innovation to their own needs.
So we've talked about financial stability, work culture, transportation, cost of living.
Yeah.
It's clear that Japan's success comes from this really complex mix of things, their values, their policies, and their advancements in technology.
And it's amazing how all those elements work together to create a society that's both modern and deeply rooted in its traditions.
But there's one more thing we need to explore, something that Hector noticed throughout his time in Japan: their dedication to lifelong learning.
Oh, that's so important.
It's a core value that influences everything, from their education system to how they approach work and personal growth. It's like this drive to constantly learn and improve, and it's definitely helped them stay ahead.
In today's world, continuous learning is more crucial than ever if you want to stay relevant and adaptable.
Hector observed this in everyday life. People reading books on public transport, constantly trying to pick up new skills and knowledge.
They see learning as a journey that never ends, not just something you do in school. It's impressive.
And this extends to business too, where diversification is huge.
Right. Spreading out those risks, exploring new opportunities.
Like Yamaha, they make vehicles and musical instruments. Or Mitsubishi, they produce vehicles and home appliances.
Smart strategy, especially in today's economy.
Makes them adaptable and resilient.
And it's a lesson for us all, right? Diversifying your skills, staying curious, trying new things, it's how you stay ahead of the curve.
It's all about being prepared for whatever the future holds. Let's pause here for a moment and let everyone digest all this amazing info about Japan. We'll be back soon to dive even deeper into their cultural values and explore what we can learn from their example.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Japanese society. Before the break, we were talking about lifelong learning and diversification, definitely some key factors in Japan's success. But it's not just about economic achievements, it's about these values that seem to be woven into their entire culture, even everyday interactions.
Yeah, totally. And something that really struck me from Hector's video was this concept of itadakimasu. It's a phrase they say before meals.
Oh, right. Itadakimasu, often translated as I humbly receive, but it's so much deeper than just being thankful for food.
Right. It's not just thanks for the grub.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything, appreciating all the effort that went into that meal, the farmers, the people who prepared it, everyone.
It's a really nice way to start a meal, so mindful. It makes you pause and be grateful for all the work that went into it.
Yeah, it shifts your perspective, right? From just expecting food to be there to really appreciating it. And not just the food itself, but the resources it took to grow it, the people involved. It's pretty amazing.
It's like a whole philosophy baked into daily life.
Yeah.
A reminder that we're all part of something bigger. So thinking about everything we've talked about, their discipline, honesty, focus on practicality, it makes sense that they've built such a harmonious and prosperous society.
It's like they've struck this balance between personal ambition and looking out for the well-being of the community.
Exactly. And it's not like Japan's perfect. No society is.
Yeah.
But they seem to have figured out a lot of things. What do you find most valuable about their approach?
Their long-term thinking is really impressive. So different from the short-term kind of individualistic approach you see in so many places.
It's like they're thinking about future generations, the impact their actions have.
Exactly. And speaking of actions, remember that story about Hector and the beer bottles?
Oh yeah, where his hosts couldn't open them without a bottle opener?
It's a funny anecdote, but it also shows how relying too much on specialized tools and processes can sometimes backfire. They might be super efficient, but it also highlights the need to be adaptable and creative.
You got to be able to think outside the box sometimes, find new solutions.
Exactly. It's like their reliance on those specific tools for specific tasks can be a strength, but also a potential weakness.
Finding that balance is key, right?
Yeah.
Japan's great at discipline and precision, but they also need to be able to adapt to thrive in a changing world. And that's where their focus on lifelong learning and diversification really shines, I think.
Totally agree. They're constantly expanding their skills and knowledge, which makes them more adaptable, ready for whatever comes their way.
This whole deep dive has been really thought-provoking. It's about being open to new ideas, new perspectives, always striving to improve, both personally and as a society.
That's what makes this exploration so worthwhile. It's not just about learning facts. It's about sparking curiosity, expanding our understanding of the world.
For me, it's that focus on balance that really resonates. How they blend tradition and modernity, discipline and adaptability, individual goals, and the well-being of the whole community. It's really something. What about you? What stands out?
I'm fascinated by how they've managed to preserve their cultural heritage while embracing new technology. It's like they're proving that progress doesn't have to mean abandoning your traditions. You can move forward while honoring your past.
I wonder how much of that comes from being an island nation.
Yeah.
They've had to be resourceful, self-reliant.
That's a great point. Geography often plays a huge role in shaping a culture. It's fascinating how they've adapted to their environment and how that's shaped their whole way of life.
It's like everything's connected, right?
Yeah.
Geography, history, culture, values, they all influence each other.
Absolutely. You can't understand a culture in isolation. You have to look at all the pieces, how they fit together to create this unique tapestry.
So as we continue exploring Japan, let's keep that in mind. Their values, their history, their geography, it's all part of what makes them so fascinating. So, as we wrap up our look at Japan, one thing's for sure. Their success isn't about some simple secret formula.
Right. It's way more nuanced than that.
It's this fascinating blend of values, economic policies, their history, even geography, like we were just discussing.
It's true. So many factors at play. But if I had to pick one thing that really makes Japan stand out, it's their knack for balancing tradition and innovation.
You nailed it. I mean, think about it. They've held on to their rich cultural heritage while embracing all this new technology, becoming part of a globalized world. And they haven't lost those core values along the way.
It shows how powerful values really are. They're like a guiding force, giving them a sense of purpose, a framework for making decisions that benefit everyone, not just themselves.
It really gets you thinking, like, how can we learn from this? How can we apply those lessons to our own lives, our own communities?
It's a great question. It's about finding ways to bring those timeless principles into our modern world, adapting them to our own challenges and situations. Remember itadakimasu, that phrase we talked about?
Yeah, I humbly receive.
It's more than just words. It's a whole mindset of gratitude, appreciating what you have, appreciating the effort of others.
Such a simple act, but it speaks volumes about their values, how they view their place in the world.
And it's something we can all practice no matter where we come from.
Totally. It reminds us that even small changes in how we think, how we act, those can make a difference, creating a more positive, harmonious world,
Exactly.
Well, as we say goodbye to Japan, at least for now, what I'm taking away is that this is just the start of our exploration.
There's always so much more to learn, more to discover about this incredible culture.
That's what's so cool about these deep dives. It's not just about absorbing information, it's about sparking curiosity, getting us to think differently, see the world with fresh eyes.
I love that.
So as you go about your day, I encourage you to think about what aspects of Japanese culture really stood out to you.
Yeah.
What lessons can you take away? How can you apply them to your own life, your work, your relationships, even your community?
Don't forget that spirit of itadakimasu. Receive humbly. Be grateful. Recognize the efforts of those around you. Make choices that benefit the whole world, not just yourself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until our next deep dive adventure, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop seeking those hidden treasures of knowledge that are out there waiting to be uncovered.